When I first took over about 18 months ago with Manassas City Police, I'd been with the organization for over 20 years. This study first came up, and it was something that I had thought about doing anyway, my own survey. Where were we at with the police department? How did the staff feel? Some of my colleagues at the department and I, we kicked it around a little bit. We were going to do one in-house. Then this partnership with George Mason came up. And the more we talked about it, the more I realized that we were better off having an outside agency, and we've heard some people talk about that, come in and do the survey for us. It was important for me to understand what the line officers and the staff felt, what quality policing was. I had my own philosophy. I wasn't sure they were on the same page that I was on. Maybe their views were different than mine. Maybe we had two different types of officers we were both looking for. So that's the reason we pushed forward with it. That was the first question. Do the line officers and the officers in the department feel the same way I do? Second, it was unbiased. We had an outside agency. Steve just talked about that as well. Would the study be leaning one way if we did it in-house? I was concerned it would be. So that was another positive aspect of it. The third one, peer review. The study had the officers deciding what the best course of action to take on some of these calls, what qualifies as quality policing. So they were gauging each other. Also wanted to know what the officers thought about each other. How are we at? Is our morale up? You have to understand the aspects of where we were at as an agency. During the time of the study, we were 15 to 20% short-staffed. That's a lot. So imagine the stress factors. Steve just spoke about it as well as the graph. Are they in a rush to finish calls? Are they just rushing through it, not being complete, doing what they needed to do because they feel rushed? And is that message being delivered from the top down? Is it just a perception on their part? Or is it somewhere with the command in between? After the study was completed and the results came out and the final reviews just came out in July, we wanted to look at what we learned. One thing that I felt that was real positive about the evaluation was the fairness in it. It wasn't myself, it wasn't a sergeant, it wasn't a lieutenant judging who was a quality police officer. It was an officer against an officer. So the fairness of it was, to me, was evident by the results of the study because they were pretty critical on some of the results. As managers, it made me think back of what do we want to focus on? What type of training are we receiving? The officers identified some shortfalls for us. A lot of that is practical based. It's not just the classroom. One of the thoughts that came out of this was it can't just be a classroom academy setting. Steve spoke about this as well. It has to be practical. Are we doing practical, video-based, whatever the case may be through the academy? One of the positive things through our Northern Virginia Academy is that as a model that we're moving towards. We're starting to see more practicals. So it was nice to see that what the study results are is also a direction that we as a Northern Virginia Academy group is moving towards. It also made us think about what kind of leaders do we have in the police department? Are we making the right promotions? Are we testing the right standards? Obviously, the officers during this study had certain qualities that they were looking for were natural leaders. They knew who they thought were good police officers. Are those the same people we are promoting? Or are we promoting out of Group C when we should be looking at Groups A and B? Or are we not testing the right things in these assessment centers? So as we sit down and we prepare for the next assessment center, we're going to go back and look at the study and tailor the assessment center to some of the qualities that were identified in in this study with GMU. Are we hiring the right people? One of the dynamics that was also identified is, I call it street smart, worldly experience. It seemed like some of the poor qualities identified by select staff was that some of the young officers that we're hiring are not very worldly. They have no street smarts. Michelle said that, or Renee said that in, 3 years, their guide to police work. And, a lot of the staff that we're hiring or applicants they've been in the womb their entire life. They lived at home. They go to a local college. They still live at home and they commute. They've never experienced anything. Next thing you know, they're applying for the police department. They're out here on night shift and they're dealing with a different class of person that they've never met in their life. How do they communicate with them? So again, going back to our training. So are we using the right training methods? Are we using the right testing methods for our applicants? Also in the promotions and the hiring. One of the slides up here showed poor contact with the public. What was left? What did we leave behind after we left the call? I spoke earlier about the perceptions of the staff and what they feel the message that I may be sending or another staff member, what kind of police work do we want done? Do we want the coming through with a broad brush, just sweeping up the entire city, treating everyone the same? It doesn't work that way. And that was evident that some of our staff, and I believe from the study that it's some of the mid-level supervisors or some of the first-line supervisors, it was everybody gets treated the same, one broad brush. And I don't know any community that any of us work in where every neighborhood is the same and should be treated the same. They don't. You can't speak to them the same. You can't have the same outcomes. So again, refocusing on the kinds of training that we need and the message that we sent from the top all the way down to the bottom. I think as managers, we push the academic field over here to the left. We're kind of afraid. We don't want someone from the outside coming in telling us what's wrong with our agency or what's good with it. We're afraid of the unknown. And we think when it's an academic field coming in, because for years we were going in opposite directions. We're afraid they're automatically going to tell us there's something wrong with the agency. Well, I think we identified out of this study some things that we have wrong, but that's a good thing, right? Now we need to decide a course of action to change it and get us turned back the right way and moving in the right direction. For me, I think the bottom line, that the message that I would like to send anyone in police work at whatever level is, don't be afraid to reach out to the academic field. They have some experts there. They have some time that we may not always have. They have resources that we don't always have. Those are all positive things. Don't be afraid of it. Use it to your advantage. Reach out, develop those partnerships. Are there things that you should be concerned about and things that I was concerned about at the beginning? Absolutely. I didn't know what kind of staff they were going to send to Manassas City Police Department. Now, everybody here in police work knows that sometimes, especially with the men, if you're going to send some college ladies to the police department, that may not be a good mix. So that was a little bit of a concern. What message would we send to them? Is it going to maintain the professional level of relationships? Are they going to become too comfortable where they're invited to after-work activities? It needed to be a clear separation. It's a concern. It happens. The other one is, again, the unknown. What was this? I was a little concerned of coming in. Were they going to identify the entire top level of the police department as the problem? That's always a concern. But I was willing to take that risk. I think each of you should be willing to take a risk like that, reach out, because I think it would be the end of your career if you did not identify these measures ahead of time. If you waited till it was too late, the scales are going to tip and you're not going to be able to recover. I'll be glad to answer any questions about how this affected us. We haven't completely finished all of the interviews. We're still going through some of them. If anyone has any questions about it.